Today, we're going over resumes and applying to departments. We're going to harp on federal for a little bit, though. Let's discuss. Before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there I think you're going to like. Next is a coaching call with any member of the team or even myself if you'd like, where we can sit down, go over your hiring process and your success in the law enforcement career. Now, some big changes have recently hit, specifically on the federal side when it comes to resume. And some of you might be saying, hey, my department doesn't even ask me for a resume. Why do I even need to worry about it? That's some departments. Maybe the next one you apply to is different. And it's not that you maybe don't get hired with this one, but you might lateral at some point in time. Or as you promote, they're going to ask you about your resume, or at least want you to submit one, right? So we're going to start with federal. Most federal jobs for law enforcement are done through what's called usajobs.gov. It's a government website where almost all federal jobs are posted, and you're pretty much able to apply through there. There's a caveat, though, with that. It is ran by an algorithm of some sort. So before your resume even gets looked at or any of your qualifications get looked at by a human individual, it is checked by a algorithm and a system to determine your referral rate, whether or not you are a good fit or a good quality candidate. It breaks it down into qualified individuals, best qualified, qualified, bare minimum, or not qualified at all. And then it refers the top qualified, so the best qualified candidates based on how many people apply. But here's the big change. As of the end of September 2025, USA Jobs no longer accepts longer than two-page resumes. Back in the day, it used to be a minimum of 8 pages. Now it is a maximum of 2 pages. And for those of you that are thinking, oh man, that's just like most places. Yes, it is, except one of the ways the algorithm would work with USA Jobs would be that it would screen your resume for keywords that showed experience. The other aspect was it also would check or I'm sorry, individuals would screen for keywords to make sure that it matches your qualified, whereas qualified candidacy, I should say. Whereas the in USA Jobs, you fill out questionnaires, which then those are predominantly run through the algorithm to determine best qualified candidates, and then you would compare. It is so common for an interviewer in a law enforcement department for federal to question a candidate on their resume due to the fact that individuals would pat their resume. And I've seen it with local departments, state departments, of course, definitely with federal, because an individual will mark, hey, I'm the most qualified individual on certain questionnaires. And then they say, where on your resume does it show that you have any qualifications for this level? And then they would say, okay, explain to me a time where you've used this. And if a candidate couldn't do that in the interview, they were immediately removed and sent packing, pretty much. And some local and states do this as well. Others don't, but some definitely do. Federal, you should 100% be prepared for that. Except now with a two-page maximum, now you have to make sure that you sell yourself in the best way possible. And the issue I see with some of this sometimes is individuals not filling out their resume and then that carrying over to their background packet and having negative effects throughout the entire hiring process. Always have your resume prepped, ready to go. Even if the department doesn't ask for it. One of the reasons why it is the best way to do the tell me about yourself question. Invert your resume. So your resume should be from present to past, going down the sheets, right? Two-page maximum now for all resumes, federal, local, and state. But you would have it from present to past going down the sheets. Well, then from there, you would then take it and inverse it, right? Flip it over and read past to present to explain, hey, tell me about yourself with sprinkling in little personal affectations of yourself. But if you don't do your resume, it's really hard to invert something you don't have. Now you can just do it off of memory, and I've seen people do that and it works out really well. Other times I see people really struggle with the tell me about yourself question, or once they do it and then we just take a split second to re-articulate it, it's dramatically better. With the federal resume now being 2 pages, a lot easier to remember, but you're also losing out on a chance to really explain yourself via written words. So my local and state resume is 2 pages, right? That's pretty typical. And my federal resume is 8 pages minimal. That's what it pretty much used to be. And I remember going through the federal system and having my mentors and advisors saying, "Hey, your resume, I have a 6 page long resume." And they're like, "That's way too short for federal." I'm like, I can't make it any longer. Yes, I could. But now I need to cram all that into 2 pages. And the 8 page, in my opinion, was way better than the 2 page. So for some of you that are saying, hey, all I've ever known is 2 page, great. For those that have done federal before or are looking at federal, and you thought, hey, I could just explain all my and really sell myself, explain it all over multiple pages, those days are gone too. You need to cram it into 2 pages. And why is that important? Well, because if you can learn to cram your experience into 2 pages written, you're going to be much better suited for your oral board or any interview where you have to explain any of your accomplishments, your experiences, and questions that you may get asked, whether that's the Chiefs board, whether that's a background interview, whether that's a psych interview, or maybe it's your primary oral board with a multitude of individuals trying to get to know you. And that's what a board is. That's what any interview is they're trying to, background investigators are trying to get to know, hey, is your background accurate? Is this who this person appears to be on paper? Is that the same person that's sitting in front of me? A psych is trying to get to know you on a mental level. Is this person in front of me, mentally equipped to handle the pressures and stressors of the job? A polygrapher is trying to figure out if this individual that is interviewing with me, are they the exact same person or are they lying about who they are? And in a board interview, same thing. They want to get to know you. Are you a good fit for the department? A chief is trying to figure out, will you mess up their department? All this can be started with the interview. And now with the new federal change and 2 pages, it just means you need to be a little more diligent, so to say. I think you should write out a, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 page resume. And then I think you should start with that and then condense it down with your best highlight reel. And that's an art, right? It's not, I shouldn't say it's an art. It's a skill. It's a skill you can learn. It's a skill you should learn, right? A lot of times you get a half hour for some of these board interviews. Half hour. If you walk in, maybe it takes 2 minutes to get you in and seated in introduction, another, minute or two to get you out. That's 4 minutes gone. Now you have 26 minutes for an interview and you have 10 questions, which does not leave you 3 minutes per question. And if we sat here for 3 minutes, 3 minutes would feel like a long time in silence. But as you're talking, it is not. You're trying to go through, you're trying to think of things. Plus, there's usually a pause in between each question to allow the evaluators to write out their notes about what you're being said. Obviously, now we have recording devices and we can just play it back. But a lot of times when it comes to grading, it's just notes so that we can just reference hey, an individual and their particular questions without having to go back and listen to the whole thing. I am I am very, very intrigued to see how this new change for USA Jobs will affect the federal side because their system was built around these longer resumes. So I'm sure they are ready and they're prepared to adapt. The question is, are you? Are you thinking about applying to federal? Is that something you're going to do? Are you ready to adapt? And chances are you probably already have a 2 page resume, but does it perfectly mimic what the department or the agency is looking for? And that's the big difference when applying to USA Jobs is you're tailoring it to every specific department, every specific position you're applying to. You have to be willing to tailor your resume to. So that means those 8 pages, maybe applying to this position over here in San Francisco or this position over here in Washington, D.C., they might ask for two slightly different things, very similar in everything else, but some things might be slightly different. And you might need to be able to explain that in different resumes. I can tell you my USA Jobs account has multiple resumes on it because one time I want to highlight this experience, other time I want to highlight this experience for the position that I'm applying to, and you can't fit it all onto 2 pages. So keep that in mind. You have to be willing to adapt and change. I could go back to California, the beginning of 2025. They got rid of a whole section on their entrance exam for their Pellet B exam. Now we're looking at with USA Jobs, you're getting rid of, all these long resumes. It's just You have to be willing to adapt and change. And if you're not, it's just you're going to struggle or you're just going to kind of fall by the wayside until you're replaced by someone that does understand the new systems or is willing to adapt to it. That's any profession. It's not just law enforcement, but a lot of times I see law enforcement as very slow to adapt. That means that the current law enforcement officers, the organizations, and even the candidates, right? Where you say, hey, this is how this department, I cannot tell you how many times a candidate will come to me and say, Frank, this is the way this department does. I'm like, oh, that one's new. I haven't seen that. I'll immediately get in there, research that department, and look into it. I'm like, oh, they do it this way. Or they'll say, hey, mine's completely different. And I'll go look it up. And the department has the most standard baseline hiring process. They just use a different terminology, and that candidate might not be familiar with it. Adaptability, flexibility, I think is going to be your number one key. But when it comes to looking at these changes in hiring process, every department is trying to streamline it right now. You need to be prepared to adapt to it, all the way from major departments anywhere across North America to even the smallest department in the most rural area of the United States. You have to be ready to adapt. Not any single department is going to have the exact same hiring practices or procedures. And if they do, great, you're as best prepared. If they don't, you need to be willing to adapt or it might cost you that position. USA Jobs for years, multi-page resumes as a requirement. A two-page resume, you would get laughed at. Now, it's all you're allowed to submit. All right. So a lot more changes coming in all law enforcement hiring process. A lot of changes. We're trying to be a positive impact on those changes. So just kind of stay in tune with us with that, but keep that going. Getting into the law enforcement, if that's your dream, that's your desire, you need to be willing to adapt, whether you're out on the street, whether you're in the hiring process, whether you're in training. Adapting is going to be key for your success in all aspects of this career or any aspect of life, to tell you the truth. But I'm predominantly hitting on your law enforcement career, so let's stick with that one. I will say this, if you don't have a resume or you don't have a good resume, start working on it. If you're going to use AI to create your resume, you better start changing your terminology and be able to articulate it the same way AI does. Don't show up in front of a background or a hiring official or a board interviewer that asks you, "Hey, articulate or explain this knowledge of yourself here," right? Good, you can use AI, but then can you actually verbally articulate it? And I think you should use AI. Use AI to better yourself, but don't use AI to try to represent yourself and then not be able to follow up with it. That's going to get in your way. That's going to hurt you, and it might cost you your dream career in law enforcement. So, or at least your initial start in law enforcement. There's a lot more. Obviously, there always is, but I hope this helps. Listen, those gifts are still in the description, the Getting Started workshop, plus the hidden bonuses, as well as a coaching call with any member of the team or even myself. We can go over maybe setting up your resume, maybe applying federal, maybe applying local, or any hurdles you think you may have. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.